To what extent have you been discriminated against professionally over the years?
Racism is always a part of the equation. When you're black, you're going to encounter racism. That's just a given. Just because I don't talk about it much doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It means that I was raised by a mom that made it very, very clear to me, you don't have the license to use that as an excuse. Figure out a way to work around it and move forward. You don't have to ignore or act like it doesn't exist, but it's an obstacle that you have to overcome. As I've traveled the country, as I've traveled the world, I have found out people of different ethnic groups, white, Hispanic, whatever, I have found that most people are judging you by the content of your character and by your deeds and actions, not by race. And that's a very, very fortunate reality and epiphany to hit me, because growing up in the streets of New York, not exposed to people of different ethnicities, you don't believe that most of the time. You believe that this is what is and always will be, et cetera, et cetera. My grandmother was white. Her name was Carmen Brady. And no one ever loved me more. I mean, she was right there with my mama. My mother was tough love. Grandma, no, love me Stevie. You know what I'm saying? She took care of me, and she taught me more about racism than my mother.
How so?
Because my mother didn't want to talk about it. But my white grandmother would say, here's what she said. Yes, a lot of us are racist. You're absolutely right. Here's what it looked like. And she'd tell me, and sure enough, I'd go out there and, because she was white, I wasn't believing her, because I'm like, her interpretation of what racism is, I'm not sure that would vibe with what black people would say, but she's my grandma and I love her. And then I go out in the real world and I'm like, yeah, and black folks saying the same thing and you're experiencing these things, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'd look at it and I'd say, okay, what am I gonna do with that? Because I plan on being in an elevated position where you're gonna hear my voice, you're gonna see me, and I'm gonna have an impact. How am I gonna handle racial issues? And my mother just said it plain one day, just be fair. And call it out when you see it. And when you see other people calling it out and it's not the case in your mind, say so. She said, because what you don't wanna do is blow into the wind and make the same arguments all the time and it has no impact. She said, everything can't be race. Sometimes it's people that don't like you. Sometimes they don't like how you acted. Sometimes they don't like your attitude. They don't like your actions. And you have to be able to decipher the difference and then speak your truth in that way. And so as I did that, all of a sudden my world opened up even more, because I didn't just have black friends. Now it's white friends. Now it's Hispanic friends. Everybody's, talking, because why? You're willing to say you can talk about it. I can't tell you how many times white folks have walked up to me, can I ask you a question? Blah, 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 blah. Is this racist? If I thought that, is that racist? Oh, wait a minute. Even if it is, I'm not mad, because you asked. So because you asked, that tells me that you want to know. And you want to know, so it's a problem you can alleviate. And if you're willing to alleviate that kind of problem, then that contributes to making the world a better place. How can you pull that off if I'm going to automatically assume this is who you are, this is how you feel, you don't give two shits about me or how I feel, and that's that? We'll never get anywhere. But when you're willing to listen, the floodgates of dialogue and communication open up in such a way that you have a chance at making your specific environment a better place, ultimately the community a better place, ultimately this world a better place. And a lot of times when I see racism, I'll call it out. We're talking today about NFL coaches. 10 openings, 8 hires, not one single black coach hired. That's a problem, especially knowing the history of the National Football League, so much so that the Rooney Rule needed to be instituted in 2003 and ultimately modified in 2022. That wouldn't need to be the case if racism wasn't a problem. So saying that is fine. What I tell a lot of white people that I run across is, I'm talking about systemically. I'm talking about a system. I'm talking about an environment. That doesn't mean you. Because there's plenty of people that don't think like that. Remember, folks was marching in the civil rights movement. There were some white folks, there were some Jewish folks marching with black folks to gain civil rights. Well, how did that happen? Because they didn't feel the way you had some Dixiecrats feeling or some Southerners feeling at that particular moment in time. All of those things come into play. And when you're able to compartmentalize and commit yourself to judging individuals on the content of their character, not the color of their skin, as the late Dr. Martin Luther King said, then guess what? You have an opportunity to contribute to making the world a better place. And that's what I try to do.